Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. Um, Welcome to this webinar on seed system security assessments. My name is Fred Smith, and I'm a consultant working with ADRI International's Agriculture and Economic Growth Group, and I'll be moderating this session. We have a really interesting activity today. As we all know, seeds are one of the most important components of of food production and food systems. And this webinar is designed to provide some important information to guide us on the performance of seed system security assessments, which are certainly important in the assessment of seed systems in different countries, in planning for the use of seeds in both emergency and resilience food security activities from USAID BHA, but also in general development planning and food production and assistance. And so ADRA is interested in strengthening our capacity and to conduct and use seed system security assessments. And this webinar is designed as a one step in that direction in that process. And so we're very excited to have this session today and provide you with some good information and resources on how to conduct seed security assessments and their importance. And ADRI International is running this webinar, and then we are also supported by USAID with the USAID and Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance Pro-Wash and Scale activity, as well as the seedsystem.org, which has been the pioneer and developer of many of the systems that we'll be talking about today. Next slide. And today we do have translation into French and Spanish. On your screen, you'll see an interpretation button, and if you press that button, you'll be able to get Spanish and French translation in addition to the English of the presentation. Next slide. And today we'll just have a very quick welcome, and we'll jump right into the webinar itself. We have introductory remarks and a brief Q&A on the introductory remarks, which will take about 10 minutes, and then we'll move into the conducting seed system security assessment presentation, which will take about 60 minutes, and we'll leave about 15 minutes for question and answer, so you can prepare those. We'll also stop briefly after the introductory remarks to ask questions of Stephen Walsh. And next slide. And so we're also going to put you to work a little bit today. We have a couple of exercises. During the presentation, we'll have 2 polls, and the question will pop up on your screen. You can make your response, and once you've made your response, and there'll be a button to click, as well as some text that you can write in to talk about your response, and then you click submit, and those will then be recorded, and we can use that in the discussion. Next slide. And in addition to the polls, we'll also do a brief breakout room. So we'll have 3 breakout rooms, one for English, one for French, and one for Spanish. So you can self-select to join the breakout room that is best for you. And there's a button down on the bottom that will enable you to select the breakout room. And so when you join a breakout room, then you'll be able to select the language that you prefer. And next slide. And in the breakout group, there will be a facilitator that will work with the group and to help to move the group along and capture your notes. And then we'll have a brief presentation to present out back to the plenary group, and you'll need to assign someone who will make that presentation for your group. And next slide. And so, to the important part, to our presenters. First of all, the introductory remarks will be made by Mr. Stephen Walsh, the Senior Advisor with the Agriculture team at the Office of Technical and Program Quality in USAID's Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance. And he serves as the technical lead for 2 BHA-funded research projects focused on seed systems. And he's collaborated on a number of seed system publications, manuals, and studies, including the Seed Emergency Response Tool, market-led seed in emergencies, and commercial, legal, and regulatory reform of seed and DRC, among several others. And prior to his work with USAID, he worked for nearly 2 decades in sub-Saharan Africa with the Consultative Group for International Agriculture Research, universities and NGOs to develop and implement research and advise on more impact-oriented seed systems for both true seed and vegetative propagated crops, and focused on smallholder farmers in more than a dozen countries in sub-Saharan Africa. So Steve will do our introductory remarks, and then Dr. Louise Sperling will do our main presentation. Dr. Sperling is the research director of Seed System LLC and coordinates seedsystem.org, which is a website that shares practical and policy advice to support farmers in crisis, chronic stress, and developmental periods. She has managed agriculture development programs in more than 35 countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, focusing particularly on strengthening smallholder seed systems. Her work encompasses normal smallholder farmer systems as well as high-stress ones. For example, she led missions after the Rwandan genocide, post-earthquake Haiti, pre-referendum South Sudan, and in Northwest Syria. Currently, most of her work is centered on fragile states and conflict-affected areas. Next slide. And just to wind up the introduction, after the presentations and Q&A and the webinar is done, please do stay connected, and you can continue with further questions and comments through ADRA's Technical Learning Lab. And also there's complimentary information on seed system security assessments and a new e-learning course on seedsystems.org. And there's a link there, and that will also be shared in the chat as well. And with that, I will turn the discussion over to Stephen Walsh. And thank you.
Thank you, Fred. So again, thank you for the introductory comments. I'm just going to make a few comments from the standpoint of the Bureau of Humanitarian Assistance, where I serve as a senior ag advisor. I think we're really appreciative of ADRA organizing this session. Of course, ADRA is an incredibly important partner for us, and we know that you operate in a number of countries. And so we're really excited to see this effort to learn and to, put a stronger effort into carrying out seed assessments. So I just want to, next slide. Okay, so I basically, just to remind you that from the standpoint of BHA, our mission is to save lives, to alleviate human suffering, and to reduce the impact of humanitarian crisis. And the role of seed within the Bureau of Humanitarian Assistance, in the fiscal year 2022, we had a total of more than 220 awards that included the agriculture sector. And amongst those 221 awards, 142 involved the provision of seed, and the total value of our ag sector and emergencies was $330 million. So this is just an indication of the importance of seed within the Bureau of Humanitarian Assistance, and the kind of rationale for why we would have such an interest in, seeing our partners do a better job when it comes to doing assessments and better understanding seed needs and areas for intervention. So I'd like just to briefly touch on some of the common issues that we see with respect to seed in Bureau of Humanitarian Assistance applications. So the sort of first area is a rather limited use of what we call the seed security framework, which is just sort of a tool to better unpack, what's the underlying issue? Is it an access issue? Is it an availability issue? Is it a seed quality issue? And how does this manifest for different crops? We generally see a very low use of this in the assessments that we do see. And we feel that there's an opportunity to do a much better job here. Secondly, seed insecurity is generally not so well described in terms of the types of farmers that are most impacted and how specifically they are impacted by a particular event. Third, the seed quantities proposed are often arbitrary. We don't always see a clear justification for the volumes proposed. And often our partners assume that there are no other seed sources beyond, there's not a recognition of the multitude of sources through which farmers may access seed. Fourth, direct seed distribution is the overwhelmingly dominant modality that's proposed by partners in terms of addressing seed needs. And there's very little effort to look at other modalities like market strengthening modalities that may leverage existing seed system actors. And then the last couple of issues, and these are, it's an issue, but it's also an area where, partners might be able to do a better job. There's generally a low recognition of existing seed systems and existing seed sources, and how these sources could be strengthened or leveraged within an emergency response. And we also see that partners tend to assume that any seed that's procured with BHA funding must be certified. However, formal seed certification is not a BHA requirement. Yes, we do accept formal seed certification. It's okay, but it is also acceptable if partners provide other seed quality assurances and other forms of documentation. It's just a recognition that there are limitations to the availability of certified seed. And then lastly, it's number 7. It could easily be the first issue or the second or third issue. There's generally a low effort to facilitate access to a broad range of varieties that are well adapted and demanded by farmers. So, activities like varietal demonstrations and the use of small packs, these are generally quite rare in BHA emergency applications. In most of the seed that's provided via direct seed distribution, it tends to be a single variety per crop. So there's a really big opportunity to do better work in terms of increasing farmer access to a broader range of varieties. So lastly, and I appreciate your patience with these introductory comments, just a couple of areas where we see some common pitfalls with seed assessments. So often we see that the methodology could be more could be clearer, and this tends to lead to a limited relationship or not a strong link between the data, the resulting findings, and then clearly linking recommendations to the findings of the assessment. This is a challenge that we see in the assessments. Second area of challenge is that the written assessments are often not put into the public domain. Thirdly, we often see that there's less engagement with other NGOs and other seed system stakeholders in assessments. That engaging with others that work in the seed system and other NGOs can be quite helpful. And then the last area is, when the findings are ready, when there is some basic level of findings that are available after an assessment, the level of engagement with seed system stakeholders to refine and develop clearer recommendations in the form of a action plan. This is an area that could really improve. So with that, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to provide these introductory comments, and I'm looking forward to the engagement today. Over.
Thank you, Steve. Are there any questions for Stephen from the group? I'm looking at a statement from Carl. BHA is willing to work with partners on innovative approaches to seed delivery that encompass multiple sources. I think emergency programs tend to default to in-kind, as the procurement logistics systems are predisposed to direct distribution. However, seeds are not the same with NFIs, and we need to move past this paradigm. So maybe, Steve, you have a comment back to that comment?
I couldn't say it better. So I appreciate that.
Okay, and just a couple of really quick questions. You mentioned the number of programs that deal with seeds. How many seed system security assessments are done in a particular year, and where are they typically published? I know you mentioned that publishing them is a problem, and people don't often do that, but if they are published, where would be some of the best places for people to look?
Yeah, seed system, that's an excellent question. Seedsystem.org is sort of the excellent place, because there's a wealth of different publications on the assessments that are there. So I often refer partners to that site. The number of assessments that are done yearly, I would say less than 10. Less than 10 assessments that are done yearly that are, I don't want to use the word credible, but that can be read, that possibly could be, that might hold up. And then very strong assessments, I would say less than a dozen. So a really strong assessment, I mean, Louise will touch on this, a really strong assessment can be, useful for years. So we can refer back to an assessment and get a lot of insights, even if an assessment was done, say, 10 years ago. So that, there's a lot of value in doing a high quality assessment, getting it into the public domain. Over.
Okay, thanks. And then one other quick one. So I know that ADRA tries very hard to get certified seed in our emergency response programs, and you mentioned that's not a requirement, but there are other seed quality assessments that are acceptable. Could you maybe outline what some alternatives to certification that would be acceptable to USAID?
Yeah, thank you. So an example would be, there's a group of seed, there's a group producing seed at a local level, but it's not certified by an official entity of the state. But ADRA or another partner could do some germination tests, do some other quality assurance procedures, assess the moisture content of the seed, and present documentation to that effect. That's acceptable. I think the thing is to remember is that if we start digging deep at how much seed is being procured, and we actually start looking at what is being called certified, it becomes apparent very quickly that not all of the seed that's being called certified could actually be certified. So that, you know, there's a disconnect between the demand for seed and actually the amount of seed that could possibly ever be certified. And there's just a recognition that it's incredibly important to consider other sources of seed, considering the extent to which these other sources account for the seed that farmers are actually using. And so I think that's the reason why historically BHA has been very, very much amenable to looking at other means to assess seed quality beyond a formal certification from a seed inspectorate.
Okay, and we're running a little short on time, but I did want to squeeze one more in before we jump to Louise, and that is how to assess quality when it comes to vegetative seedlings. And you know, most of the producers don't have quality certification or particularly good quality standards for vegetative seedlings.
This is an excellent question. I mean, I think BHA has an ongoing program with the International Potato Center looking specifically at RTB seed systems. I will follow up with providing some links to that work through the ADRA colleagues here. But I mean, I will say that there's been different protocols that have been developed for assessing seed quality for both sweet potato and cassava, which, you know, invariably are based on doing visual assessments and, you know, physically looking at the seed. And, you know, while these aren't sort of necessarily as strong as they would be if, like, you know, sampling was done and testing for disease was done, they are incredibly effective in terms of mitigating against the chance of spreading a lot of disease. So, you know, there are protocols that have been developed both for cassava and for sweet potato that can be quite useful in terms of doing visual inspections of planting material. Speaking in particular of sweet potato vines and of cassava stems. Over.
Okay, great. Thank you, Steve. And we'll certainly follow up with you to get some access to those protocols. It's something that we're certainly working towards doing a better job of assessing quality of those materials. But thank you so much for your introductory remarks and the brief Q&A. Maybe we can have some time to come back to you. But for now, without further ado, I'd like to move on to have Dr. Louise Sperling begin her presentation. Thank you. And Louise?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Louise, we do.
Excellent. You know, I wanted to mention before I start about BHA USAID. You might know this technique is relatively new, but BHA, and correct me, Steve, Carl, and others, basically requires this kind of assessment. If you're intervening in an area with the same response 3 seasons in a row. So think about your own practice. Are you repeating and repeating and repeating the same thing? Do you understand what's going on? That's why we're doing these assessments. So USAID BHA is very unique as a donor in trying to figure out what the real problem is. Okay, good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. And I know we're working in different languages, so please ask questions at any time if something isn't clear. Afia signaled to me that this presentation, Steve's presentation, Fred's presentation, they'll all be given to you by email at the end. So don't take copious notes, just try to think and participate. Okay, quickly, let me just turn on my video if it works. But oops. Just want to say hello to all of you. Good morning. I will use the video when I do discussion, but I prefer to look at the slides myself as I go. Okay, someone else is organizing the slides, is that it? Someone else is moving the slides? Afia?
No, Louise, you are moving them. Would you prefer we do it for you?
No, don't. I can't seem to move them. Very interesting. Okay,
Let's try
let me have you move them because for whatever reason, I cannot move them.
Okay, then you have to stop sharing and then I share.
No, it's not moving them. Okay, let me stop sharing and start again. So sorry about that glitch. Please, you do it and we'll figure it out later.
Okay, just give me a second. Let me get the slides up.
Or do you want me to try again? What's good for you? Okay, so
Try again.
Should I try again?
Yes.
Ah, perfect. So basically, why are we doing these kind of assessments? Why are they important? And there are two big things. First, food issues are different from seed issues. I mean, they're linked, but they're different. Listen closely to these two phrases and think about your work in the field. Households can have enough seed to sow a plot, but little to eat. The inverse, households can have adequate food, but lack access to the seed they need to make plots productive. So food and seed are linked, but they're different. And food insecurity is not equal to seed insecurity. Oops, now I can't move my slides.
We were not seeing your slides.
You were not.
No, so I'm sharing my screen now.
Okay, good. So basically, I'm sorry you weren't seeing my slides, but here, this is what I was just saying. Food insecurity is not equal to seed insecurity. Next. Okay, the second big reason for doing an assessment on seed is that you're doing something really serious and you want to get it right. You know, you say, well, I'm just going to give seed and then things will go on as normal. But even short-term interventions can have effects over many seasons. So you give seed, but farmers might resow the seed and they might resow the seed again. So seed interventions are really never short-term. I mean, the second thing to know about seriousness of seed is that it can do harm. You know, repeated seed aid can have negative consequences. You know, you can undermine local systems. You can create farmer dependencies, farmers always expecting seed. You can distort crop profiles. You know, if you keep on giving maize, farmers might drop sorghum, and you can destroy seed business. So you think seed is a small thing. Seed is a really big thing. It can have many, many positive, but also negative consequences. Next. Ask questions at any time, okay? So I want to go back to the original logic of emergency seed aid, and it's really only about 30 years old. So originally, we said we're giving seed because we want to give farmers the means to produce their own crops for food and sale. So in theory, seed aid was sustainable. You give seed and then you don't need to do it again. And it was empowering because farmers controlled their future. You know, we also said at the beginning, maybe 3 decades ago, that we're giving seed because we're limiting food aid, right? So we give seed and then we can get rid of food aid. Because if you give a kilo of sorghum seed, you can get at least 100 kilos of food. So it sounded like a really great and doable intervention. Next. In practice, what we're seeing, and I don't know everyone on the webinar which country you come from, but in practice, we're seeing repeated seed aid in many countries. And this is just an example of a few countries. There are many more. You know, in Burundi, we've had seed aid over 35 seasons in a row, on and off. Eastern Kenya, Zimbabwe, Ethiopia has the record, I think. And we've had seed aid pretty much continuously since 1974. So it's 40 years and ongoing. So, and then we can add Central African Republic, we can add Eastern DRC, we can add Southern Africa. Basically, we're giving repeated seed aid instead of solving the problems, instead of getting very targeted responses. And that's one of the reasons why we want to do these assessments. Next, please. Okay, next. So what's the history? Just to give you an idea. Thanks, Sophia. Perfect. History gone. You know, what's the history? This is a relatively new technique. Well, the history is that in about 2005, so 25 years ago, there were 4 options. One option was we don't do an assessment and we give seed. The second option, and all of these still exist today, is that we assess food, and then we say, okay, they need food, they must need seed. So seed need was assumed. The third, very common, even today, is that there's a harvest drop or production drop. You know, production has decreased, there's a drought. And then you assume that seed is needed. And then the fourth, which particularly people like me did, because I'm a scientific researcher, you do lengthy surveys, but you still decide that seed is needed before the results are in. So basically, even today, assumptions, not facts, are guiding our seed security response. And you think of what Steve just said, that they only have about 10 assessments a year. Think about how many seed interventions are going without assessments. Next, please. What I want to say to all of us on the webinar today is that we're doing science here. We are evidence-based. And many of our assumptions might be wrong. So let's be open. Let's look at the evidence. And this is a frequent assumption just to stimulate your thinking. We often say there's a harvest failure, there's no seed. I kind of want to ask you to raise your hand as I go on. How many people have heard in their proposals, there's a harvest failure, there's no seed? Just quickly raise your hands. Or how many have used that in their proposals? Well, I can't see. Are there any hands raised? Ah, well, at least 2. Thank you guys for speaking out. Okay, good. I see this all the time. Well, let's go and look at this assumption. Thanks. Let's go next. Let me show you why this is wrong. So this is you as agronomists in the room. This is just on sorghum in Ethiopia. Very quickly, a household in this place in Ethiopia would need 11 to 12 kilos of seed. That's the second row there. Even in a really bad year, so go down, I think it's the 5th row, there we get 260 kilos. So they plant 11 and 12. Thanks, Sophia. They get 260. I mean, a really bad year. But if you divide it, even with a 260, they would need 4.6 or less than 5% of the harvest for seed. So they might have a food problem, or they definitely have a food problem, but they don't necessarily have a seed problem. So this is why we do assessments, to look at the evidence, to not do assumptions, but look at the evidence. Next, please. Okay, let me start by resources, because I want you to know that there are lots of things to help you. Next. So this guide was done in 2008, and basically a very layperson's guide. So you don't need to know anything about seed, and it's in French and English. I don't know if you've seen it. Next. The guide, this particular guide is published on seedsystem.org, along with all the tools. Okay, so that's one guide. Next. FAO, the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, in 2016 published another set of tools which are very similar. And I know Steve Walsh was very instrumental in getting this guide out. So there are tools from FAO, very similar to Seed System. These tools, I think, are in French, English, and Spanish. They haven't been updated. Just so you know, we're talking with FAO and updating together Seed System and FAO tools. Next. Okay, a third set of tools has recently been developed by a project called S34D, funded by BHA. They call them Rapid Seed Security Assessment Tools. They are available, I think, on S34D websites, but they also recently put them in printed form. Next. I think these are just in English. So basically, you're going to have this PowerPoint. There are at least 3 sets of tools you can look at. I would say they're extremely similar. I'm not sure that one is more rapid than the other. And I've used all 3. I think it's more that they're different degrees of rigor. Just what Steve was saying, it's not just that you do the assessment, look at the rigor. Are they real? Are they real results? Next. I do want to mention that there's different terminology, which basically often refers to the same thing. And apologies, I should have also translated this into French. So sometimes it's called Seed System Security Assessment. And I do this not to confuse it with Sub-Saharan Africa, SSA. Also because we're looking at systems. Some people like FAO use Seed Security Assessment. Steve and Carl and others sometimes use Seed System Assessment. And then EPS34D says Rapid Seed System Security Assessment. All of these are fine. All of these are usable, whatever makes you use comfortable. They're not competing. They're all acceptable. Next. What's most important.
Hi, Louise. Louise,
Yep.
This is Fred. I had a quick question on that.
Sure.
The Rapid Seed System Security Assessment, I was a while back reading a research paper where the SSSA was being tested for effectiveness in comparison to some of the other assessment models. And it was inconclusive, at least the piece that I wrote, in terms of whether or not you gained efficiency by doing the rapid assessment, or that it was equal in terms of quality. Could you maybe comment on that very quickly?
I'm glad you're frank. So I don't believe it's inherently first more rapid, because what really determines the time, and I'll discuss this in process, because I have a whole section for you guys on what do you have to do, how many people, when. That's farther down, but it's not more rapid. It's not more rapid. I as a professional, I feel these tools are not as precise as some of the others. So that's why I want to go to the next slide, Fred, quickly, and just say that we don't care what tools you use, and I hope you use several, but whatever you do, there are a set of standards that have been devised by FAO, the Food and Agriculture, and by Seed System, to say whatever assessment you do, make sure it includes these elements. Make sure these processes are respected. Okay, so I don't want to comment too much. It depends on who does the assessment. lots of things. But the tools themselves, you guys are all scientists. Look at the specificity. Next. What I'd also ask you to do as we move forward here is look at the actual assessments, just like Fred just said. He looked at the assessment. Here are some. Seed System posts the assessment, but so do others. So if you go to Seed System and you look under field assessments, you'll see there from Burkina and DRC and Ethiopia and Madagascar, Sierra Leone, lots of places, Syria, Timor-Leste. Look and see, are the assessments clear? Is the data clear? Is the process clear? Do we get insights? Go down. So Seed System posts assessments. So does FAO, by the way. Next. FAO posts less regularly. Recently, Syria, Lesotho, they did one very recently in Sudan. So I would say, look at the tools, look at the reports, and then you as experts also move forward. Again, what I want to say is these tools are constantly in revision. So your inputs would be lovely. So we're going to do a quick poll. Can you show the whole poll? Do you want to show it, Afia?
Yes, just give me a second and I'll launch it.
Good. So basically, have you ever done an assessment? That's all we're asking. Look at the reaction buttons. Have you yourself ever conducted a seed system assessment? Whatever type, RSSA, SSA, yes or no? And if yes, when and where? Easy question. Really curious about the response. So go to it. 2 minutes.
We have 10 people, so I encourage everyone to sign to answer the questions. We have 34 people in attendance. Thank you. I see that it's coming up. Let's give it a few more seconds. If I can get a couple more people to vote, great, great, great. You're doing a good job. 16, let's get to 20, and then we can end the polls and share the results. 17, 3 more people. 18. Are we done? Are we good? Okay, let's end the polls now. Louise, is it a good time to end it?
Good. I'm curious.
Okay.
So I can't see. Okay. So a quarter of you have, which is impressive, to be honest. 3/4 have not. Okay. So for those of you who have, please ask questions. For those of you who have not, don't be afraid to ask questions. Can we show it all when and where?
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting.
Hold on and let me share that screen. Do you see?
I don't see. Does anyone else see?
Okay. Let me then just share the screen and pull that up. So you should see.
Burkina, Madagascar, Rwanda. Oh, Blue Nile, Sudan. Very interesting. Sudan. Okay,
Yeah,
so basically, can you go down? Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, good. So interestingly, the ones who answered, all in Africa. But a good range of countries. Very, very impressive. Does anyone there, just one person, because we're a little behind time, but want to comment? Any of you who did an assessment, anything you want to share about it? Are there any hands raised? I can't see. So sorry.
Hi, Hi, Luis. I think I can share some experiences of conducting system security assessment in Sudan. So we conducted the system security assessment just before the war broke, and then the war happened. So we are not sure how relevant the results would be still. That's the main challenge. over.
What an excellent notation that things in the places we work can change very quickly. Excellent. Someone else?
No, just on Anil's point, it's actually, Anil, we did another one just recently, and it's interesting the differences between what the farmers wanted. Before the war broke out, they wanted more of the cash crops, and now they want more of the food crops. So it was very interesting.
Wow, very interesting. Okay, let's continue because we're time constrained, but these type of insights, make them at any time. Obviously, this is a real learning group. Interesting insight. Okay, next. Okay, so seed security system assessment. What is the content of it? Am I going too fast? Anyone who wants me to slow down, just shout out. Okay, continue. Next slide. So basically, in an assessment, we're not calculating seed needs. We're not saying how much seed is needed, although many people do that. What we're doing is we're looking at the functioning of systems, seeing if there's a problem, and then seeing if there's a solution. Next. Up. I think you went a bit too fast. Down. Okay, so basically in an assessment, you're looking at all the channels that farmers use. So you see the orange cylinders on the top. So they might use government sources or commercial sources. They might use certified seed. But equally, if you go to the blue cylinders, they might get seed from their own stocks, from their own networks, from the old local markets. Or if you look at the right, they might get seed from community-based or local seed businesses. So important in an assessment, you guys who are leading one, is that you assess all the channels that farmers might use. Next. Steve mentioned this, but you're assessing the channels and you're saying, basically, is seed available? You know, is it near? Is it in time? Is the quantity there? Can farmers access it? Do they have adequate income? Or can they barter? Or can they share? Is the seed health okay? Germination, stuff like that? And is the variety okay? Are they adapted and meet farmers' preferences? Just to signal that all four of these are important. Often with seed quality, when you use the word quality, people think about healthy, certified. But quality, equally or important, sometimes more important, is do farmers like the varieties? Okay, so always two aspects of quality. Next. Thanks. So then if you have a problem, you've identified a problem. Well, if seed isn't available, in the short term, you might give seed, directly distribute it. But in the long term, you don't keep on giving seed. It rarely happens that seed always is not available. If seed always is not available, these people should not be in farming. Okay, access. In the short term, you might give vouchers in cash. And I'm sure most of you have done that. But if you don't have money, if you don't have means again and again, then you have to move in the long term, it's a chronic stress thing, to income generation, to agro-enterprise. Next. If seed is poor quality, in the short term, you might do seed fairs with quality controls. Or you might do a direct distribution of quality seed. But really, seed quality, if you look at the right, is usually chronic. So you have to work with seed companies, you have to work with farmers on their own quality control, you have to work in improving quality in local markets. And then there's the issue of variety, which is the fourth parameter. You know, if you don't have varieties in an emergency, you might do limited introductions, but with caution. But basically, again, it's a chronic stress problem. Look at introducing new varieties with good technical support, or you might even do breeding next. So we do, this is just to show you that we do an assessment to get the right response. And the responses can be really different. You know, so you might do direct distribution, you might do a fair, you might do cash, all which are very different. Next. Just to highlight that we do an assessment voluntarily, but with BHA, and I mentioned this at the beginning, they strongly suggest that if you 3 seasons in a row, you're doing the same intervention, take a rethink, right? Do an assessment. Next. Okay, let's get to some of the technical content. And I just want to give you a flavor. On the technical content, basically, you're looking at demand, and then you look at supply. That's all it is. So first, on demand. Let's go next. There's a super easy technique. And if there's only one thing you have to do on demand, do this. Basically, you ask farmers what crops are they planting and the amounts, right? Empirical evidence. And then you say, next season, what plants, crops are you planting and the amounts? And you ask, you know, are they planting more, less, or the same? So then you uncover if there's a concrete problem and the response needed. So let me go back a step. You can't say to farmers, do you need seed? Because they will always say, yes, we need seed. So rather, what you do is you ask farmers empirically, what were they doing before? What are they doing now after disaster? Next. There are a range of constraints, a range of reasons that farmers might be planting less. I'm giving you a flavor here. It might have to do with seed. And the first 3 have to do with seed availability. So I'm planting less because I can't find cuttings. I can't find cassava cuttings. That's number 2. Actually, there are 30 of these, right? Or I'm planting less because the market's not working. There's no seed on the market. Okay, that's seed availability constraint. You know, there could be a seed access constraint. I have no money. There could be a seed quality constraint. I don't like the variety. But interestingly, many of the reasons that farmers plant less have nothing. Oh, I can move mine now. Have not. Can you see my arrow? I don't know. Have nothing to do with seed. I might plant less because I have no labor. I'm ill. I have no land. I don't have irrigation. All sorts of things. Or maybe I'm planting less because the market is no good. So the reasons that farmers plant less will gear your response. So I have a question for all of you. What do you think the major reason in all the assessments we have done that farmers plant less, the major problem identified in a seed security, seed system assessment? Be brave. Is anyone answering?
Maybe restate your question.
Good. Okay, so there are lots of reasons that farmers might plant less, that they might have a problem. And this slide shows you some of the reasons that we found. In all the assessments we've done, what do you think is the major reason that farmers have problems with seed security?
Is it insufficient labor?
That's a reason. It's not the major one, but in places like Sudan, very important. Another guess.
Perhaps seed availability.
Okay, that's often given that there are no cuttings for cassava.
Or what about not necessarily availability, but accessibility?
Aha, you got it.
Not necessarily money, but can be too far away, can be.
It's money.
Okay.
It's access. You got it exactly. So there are other reasons, but the major reason everywhere in the world is usually there is seed there, but I can't access it. Very good. Okay, continue. I'm actually going to skip this poll because we're a bit behind, if you don't mind. Okay, let's just skip it. Okay, so that's the demand side. And the demand side, basically you figure out what is the real driving reason that farmers have a problem with seed, and you ask them. Let's look now, you together, on the supply side. So if you're doing an assessment, what kinds of things would you consider on the supply side? So what we want you to do, and I hope we can move forward, Afia, I'll hurry up a bit, is go out into breakout groups, and I would say take 8 minutes so that you're back here in 10 minutes. And imagine your team has been tasked with assessing our seed channels functioning. Okay, so I need to know about the supply side. Discuss as a group, because you're experts here, you work in the field. What sources would you consider first? What sources do you have to look at? What actors should you talk to? And what else is key? So just think big here, guys. If you're leading an assessment, what are the big things you have to consider? Sources, actors, and what else? So it's about 5 minutes before the hour. Let's break into groups, come back at 3 minutes after the hour, and someone present. Afia or Fred, do you want to give instructions more on the breakout groups?
Yes, Louise. So the breakout groups are going to be self-assigned. I'm going to launch the rooms now. Please select the language of preference and join the group. If you speak French or Spanish, I would kindly encourage you to join those groups so that we don't have a lot of us in the English group. Thank you. I'm just opening the groups. So please self-select and join the group.
Just think quickly, think big. You know, if you have to do a work plan, which sources, which actors, and what else? Go, looking forward. Steve, you have a comment when everyone here. We see that the market is a typically more important source of seed for poor farmers. Yep. Thanks, Steve. So the reason with money, he's just adding, is that we see that the market is where poor get seed, so they need money. Okay, it's up to you guys. Are we in the breakout groups?
No, we have a few in the breakout groups, but majority are in the main group. Can you please select and join a group? If you need guidance, when you look below your Zoom link where you see mute, share video chat, you would also find a button that says breakout. Click on top of that, you see a pop-up box that says join breakout room. Click on that and you will see the 3 rooms and you'll be able to select the language of preference and join.
Afia, can you repeat that again, the exact instructions?
Yes, so below your Zoom page, you would see where you have the chat, participants, share screen. There is another button there that says breakout. If you click on that, there will be a pop-up box that says join breakout room. And when you click on that, you'll be able to select the preference, the room of preference. I see 11 people have joined the English room. One person is in the Spanish room, and there's no one in the French room. And we have 14 people in the main room. So,
Okay, well, I would say you guys who are in the English group, start your work. And anyone who wants to join the English group, fine. Just want you guys to think by yourselves. You know, those of you who don't want to be in a group, think which sources, which actors, and what else. Okay.
okay. I see a couple people moving into the other groups. Thank you. Just a few more.
Sophia, at 7 hours, 7 after, could you bring us back?
Just hold on. I just put some of them in the groups. Let me hop into the groups and see what's going on and give them 2 minutes more. Okay, so I'm closing out the rooms now. They would have 60 seconds to leave the breakout rooms.
I'm sorry?
I just closed the breakout rooms. There'll be 60 seconds for them to rejoin.
No, they can have at least 5 more minutes to really work together. 5,
Oh.
7. Yes, please. I'd like them to work together.
I'm not able to recall, so they'll be joining.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it broke up our breakout rooms.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
we were in
That
the
was
middle of
that was the
discussion.
world. That was the shortest 10 minutes ever.
Me too. Listen, we're all together again. Let's just discuss this as a plenary, okay? Is
Mhm.
everyone back?
Just a few, but we have 26. We can move on, and then I'll move the rest to plenary.
I'm sorry. What?
We can start, and then I'll bring the rest back to plenary.
Okay. That was a whirlwind. Okay, so let's do this as a plenary. I don't know how many are together right now. At least 10, 15?
We have 26 people back in the main
Okay,
room.
thanks, Fred. Okay, so let's I don't know if we can unmute, but Fred, if you could really help that we get people to speak out. So first of all, sources.
Well, I can go on that. We were just discussing with in the Spanish group, which actually was Honduras. And they say that one of the sources was the government, because government have like a department that produce the seeds, and also some universities, which is the private production. But basically in Honduras, more is the production on the seeds for the, what's called food consumption.
Good. Okay, so two sources that Nestor said were government and university that you have to assess.
Yeah.
What else? What
Government
else?
organizations and private as universities.
Yep.
That are
Okay. What else do you have to assess? Other points of view.
Research institute.
Can I?
Anil, yeah?
Research institute.
Yeah, I'm from Nepal, and in our case, basically, the source is from a private company or seed producer company. That is one, and another is importing, the seed importing company. That is the second one, and some from the government farms who are producing the seeds. Okay.
Okay, so you added private companies importing. So far we have, when you assess the sources, government, university, private importing companies.
yeah, government farms, not the. We do have these government farms who are dedicated for the seed production as well.
Great, government
So-
farms. Good.
Yeah.
Good. What else? If you're leading an assessment, what do you have to
Then-
assess for seed supply?
Then another one is like the individual level, the household level. Even people, they are also producing the seeds and supplying the seeds at individual level as well. That is another one. And the agro vet shop.
I'm sorry, what was the last?
They are selling the medicine and seeds. That is the shopkeeper. We call here agro vet.
Good. So household level you have to assess, and the shopkeeper, the agro vet, you have to assess to look at supply.
Yep.
What else?
Yeah.
Someone else. We're getting a good list here. I'm sorry, please keep that
Yeah.
slide up.
Hello?
Yes, Luis.
I don't know what this slide. Yeah. Someone else. Yeah?
Yes, Luis from the English group.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Vincent from Sudan. We are just adding what the rest of the team has not mentioned, like the markets. There are also markets where people sell seeds, and this is common in many rural areas, like in Sudan where we are. You'll find that there are people who sell these seeds in markets. So these markets will be good places also to assess. And then just to add a little bit on the families, some families use the local methods of seed preservation. When they harvest, then they do take the best quality and put it, some use even the kitchen, put it under the roof where the smoke goes in, and that becomes a preservation of the seeds for the next season. So the households would be also very good to assess. So that's what I wanted to add in.
Great. Excellent.
you.
Households, local markets, local agro dealer shopkeepers. Anyone else want to add?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
this is Farai from Mozambique. For this source and for this discussion, the first thing which I will look for is the quality of seed which are we talking about. If we talk about certified seed, the first source of information that we need to look at the government institution, especially research institution, because seed production is something that is controlled by the government normally before it go to the market, to the different companies that can be involved in this process. But if we consider the grain that the rural producers use for them, we also can look at what our other colleagues have mentioned, like these small shops that are available around the rural area. We can talk about the private company who deal with the seed production, and also we can deal with the rural family that sometimes they keep the seeds for the next agriculture season.
What an excellent group. Excellent. Okay, I have to close this, but go to the next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, so basically we didn't have time to work this all through, and it might be interesting at some point, Agra, to have a workshop, Audra, to work this through. But you answered perfectly the first one. You have to look at all seed channels, not just the formal. So yes, government, private companies, universities, but don't forget farmers' own stocks. Don't forget local markets. All of these have to be assessed. And then I added a few things, but this is a bigger discussion. You have to say which crops. You focus on which crops for the upcoming season. You know, so if next season is for beans, make sure you include beans. You talk to suppliers, as you guys said, seed companies. Talk to the traders, talk to community-based groups. You visit markets and you look at prices. You made, even though our breakout groups didn't really break out very much, you made really good progress. Good thinkers here. Okay, continue. Sorry, we don't have more time. Okay, let me just end in about 10, 15 minutes so you'll have more questions. What is the process? Just a bit about the process. First, you have to include diverse stakeholders. And you know this, not just government agents, but farmers, community groups, women's focus groups. We do this, especially for women. As you said, on the supply side, we look at the informal markets. We look at the formal, and you might look at community-based also. And then other key informants, government personnel, processors, NGOs. So a good range of people. Next. Just to say, we look at informal and formal markets, but the group understands that clearly. Next. The length of time, some of you say, well, isn't this long? Do we have time? Well, basically, this is a calendar. You take 2 days for training. That's the first 2. Then you do field work at one site, depending on how many sites. It only takes 3-4 days. Then let's say you do field work at a second site. You analyze it simultaneously. You usually can do this in about 2.5 weeks, including, so if you look at the red box at the bottom, a public feedback. So if you're well organized and you know what you're doing, you can do this in about 2.5 weeks, including the data analysis. For some people, it's longer. Next, I'm taking these slides from a e-course. So all the things that are funny in the orange are from an e-course. Okay, when should you do it? Well, frankly, you have to do it. You do it after a stress, but whatever you do, the results have to be in well before the next planting season. Because even the feedback, even the report write-up, because you want to influence what you do the next season. That's why we do these. So generally you want to time it so you can get past information from the one season that just finished. Absolutely, so you can figure out what the next season needs are. And then be completed in time so you can use the results. And I know this is often very rushed, but remember, you have to use the results. Next. There's a big issue about whether you should, consult an outside expert, just hire someone to do it, or whether you should work in teams, meaning create teams of Agra staff. And we had one of the best assessments I have ever seen, just finished in southern Madagascar, where Audra and I say Audra, put together a fabulous team. I strongly prefer teams because you get people engaged in the assessment, but it's the teams who know the communities, and it's the teams who will engage in future actions. I've never seen an outside expert alone do a really good evaluation. I'm just being honest. Next. On your teams, I'll just go at the bottom, you might include people who are going to implement next season, who will follow up. You might people have farming systems expertise. You might might get some seed specialists, some economists, gender and vulnerability specialists, really important. Sometimes it's nice to get ministry staff in the field, really changes their mind. So teams are not just enumerators, people you hire to do surveys. Teams like our Audra team in South Madagascar are people who have great expertise and who are committed. Next. Finally, data collection. People say, can I use tablets? It's a mix. You know, the tablet can do, and we do use tablets, can do household interviews, agro dealers, local retailers, anything that has a high quantitative component. Thanks, you can do by tablet. But a lot of it, we still need paper. You know, when you're doing women's focus groups, community interviews, when you're asking large traders where they get stocks. So it's a mix of methods. And it works best if it's a mix. Next. Just to say, I've gone through this process quickly. In the discussion, we'll continue, but basically diverse stakeholders. The length of time is pretty quick if you know what you're doing. Timing, make sure you do it in time to plan for the next season. Teams versus individuals, I've given my strong opinion that teams are better. But you might have a different opinion. And data collection, it's really both paper and tablet. And then we can discuss whatever else you want to know. Next. Okay, this is just, I'm just wrapping up here just to tell you these resources. I mentioned the guide at the left, and Fred very generously mentioned this e-learning course at the right. It's an 8-module course. It's in English, and actually we're revising it this very moment. On the left, other resources, maybe you know this FAO volume on standards. It's a bit old, but it's still good. And then FAO has done a lot of good work on seed quality. That's the guide on the right. Next. Lots of good resources on response. So for instance, there's a CRS manual on agricultural fairs and vouchers. FAO, but maybe you guys have manuals too from your own organizations. There's a cash manual, so lots of good advice on response. Next. And I think this is the last. And then just to highlight that there are 2 new things that came out last year in French and English. Also translating into Arabic right now. There's a seed emergency response toolkit, overall guide. And then there's a particular guide on the right, how to work in conflict areas. But these are just starts. Next. And that's it. Really quick overview. Looking forward to questions.
Thank you, Louise, and thank you for a great presentation and really informative and very helpful to our groups. Carl had interjected a couple of items in the chat just to follow up on a couple of things you mentioned. First of all, talking about that the seed assessments often focus on easy targets like formal sources of seed and agri-dealers, government, extension agents, et cetera. And he reiterated that this can lead to some bias in the seed assessments. And let's see, maybe move on to the next one. And the other comment was that he also suggested teams because teams internalize the process and recommendations and results, and otherwise he's suggesting that it becomes a tick the box exercise as opposed to a really analytical process that yields good results. And also that Steve mentioned that the nature of seed system security assessment changes when there's more than one organization involved. So a few different perspectives there from Steve and Carl.
Yeah, I just want to say about different organizations. Obviously great points, everybody. It's harder when you say ADRA should work with World Vision, should work with Catholic Relief Services, but it's much better when you do, it's much more rigorous exchange of ideas when multiple organizations come together. And I hope you guys do that in Kasai next season. Yep.
Yep. And Steve also mentioned a good point also that encouraging the partners to do the seed assessment with staff as much as possible and not to hire out the data collectors, because then you internalize that information and that experience with the staff of the project or organization, rather than have it go away with the hired enumerators.
Fred, I just want to mention something. I would like to ask a question to Liz, how to do, because it's a great presentation, but in the field, what I have seen, especially on the quality, how to deal with, because sometimes we talk about like quality, the seed could be physically, apparently good quality, but there are diseases that are transmitted through the seeds, and it doesn't show any symptoms. And that is the problem, because people can go and plant it and spread the disease that we can never get rid of. And the other thing that I have seen, especially in some parts of DRC, is that you go to seed producers that apparently they have the certification, but had been purchased. I mean, there is, when you see the actual quality of the seed, is the quality, you can see that is not a good quality, but they still have a certificate, a document saying that this is a good quality. So I don't know how to deal with this kind of problems, because I have seen that, especially in DRC, you know, because in DRC where there are big diseases like the mosaic and also the bacterial wilt in banana, which is all spread all around, and it's basic diseases.
What a brilliant question. Should I leave that to Steve to answer first? Steve, do you want to answer?
Yeah, I'll just say quickly, these are great points. I don't want to speak about the certification thing in DRC, but I think you're absolutely right. Like, just because it's certified, that doesn't, it's a starting point, but that in and of itself is often far from sufficient. With respect to cassava, with Mosaic, the visuals are absolutely, spot on for Mosaic. Like, you can do, and there are protocols, there's very clear protocols that have been developed for DRC to assess cassava fields. Unfortunately, very few partners actually follow the protocol, but they exist. They've been tested with SSSA, and I'm happy to follow up and share those with you. I'm not quite sure. I mean, I think the banana stuff probably requires a little bit more discussion. I'd be happy to link you in with some of those resources for additional follow-up. But I think you raised an excellent point around the seed certification. And in terms of like disease transmission, I think we need to be cognizant that, like, under the best of circumstances, there's very little actual testing that's going on for specific pathogens, even whether it's certified or non-certified. The testing of specific pathogens as part of a seed certification process, it's almost not happening. But the best we can do is to look for like clear custodial links in the seed chain to know like where the mother fields are, and to in the case of the vegetatively propagated crops, really ensuring that there's strong protocols used to visually inspect planting material.
I see that Anil has a comment, and then I will jump in, and then I'm sure there's some more questions. Anil?
Yeah, thank you so much, Luis, for the excellent presentations. Although the time is not enough for us to get a little bit more on it. My query and some sort of like the experience from our country, from Nepal, we are losing the indigenous variety of seeds. Like in case of rice, we are losing the black rice. That is very a tasty one, and it's a good flavor. And right now we are losing. That's a kind of like a basmati, so-called basmati kind of rice. That is one. And another one is direct seeded rice. That is very good in terms of like climate change and drought tolerance as well. It's direct seeded and no need rain or waterlogging condition for that kind of rice. That is one issue that we have. For that case, definitely we have to think on the conservations. That is the one. And another, regarding the seed voucher, in the past as well, I was involved. Immediately after the earthquake, I was working in CARE International. At the time, we also applied this seed voucher to the farmers. Okay, that's a good approach. And even I saw in the chat, Adra also have experience on it. And nowadays is quite popular. So if you have any sort of recent the system for the voucher like this, not only the paper voucher, might be the other voucher as well for the seeds, that might be quite useful for the response program as well. Right now we are facing the earthquake in the western part of Nepal as well. So in the future as well, that might be quite effective if we can share these things. That's it from my side. Thank you so much, Luis.
Really, very good comments. So first on, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Fred, after I finish this comment. So first, on the seed vouchers and fairs, if you plan them well and you try to bring in diversity, bring in traders and farmers who have diversity, like your basmati black rice, the response can help with not just seed, but getting varieties. But absolutely excellent that you emphasized that the seed is important, but so is the variety. Obviously on conservation, often these seed initiatives, the emergency ones, they're tied to development and conservation ones. So don't just think, okay, I'm going to do a seed emergency and then my job is over. Think about the different stages. Okay, we dealt with the emergency. Let's now go to developmental and conservation. So really good that you also highlighted that. On the seed quality issue, and this is my last comment, Fred, is I think we need, it's always a problem. It's always a challenge. And I think also at the field level, we need better testing instruments to look at quality. So I think that's going to be the next 5 years. How do you look more at quality at the field level? I'd like to continue, but I'm going to hand over to Mr. Fred.
Thank you so much, Louise, and thank you, Stephen. We really appreciate both of your willingness to participate in this webinar with us and provide us with your information and guidance. It's been extremely helpful and a great starting point for ADRA to begin to ramp up its work with seed system security assessments and seed systems more generally. Again, as we mentioned in the beginning, please do submit any additional questions that you may have to tll@adra.org, and we'll gather up those comments. We'll provide links to all the publications, and we'll provide a recording of the webinar as well. But want to thank Louise and Stephen. Also want to reiterate thanks to USAID and to the Pro Wash and Scale activity. They have provided support for Louise to be here. And again, thank you all for attending, and look forward to further engagement on seed system security assessments going forward.